Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to give you that shortcut, that essential briefing on, well, what's probably the fastest moving part of finance today. We are definitely ripping up the old playbooks. I mean, digital wealth isn't some small side category anymore, is it? For a lot of high net worth folks, it's becoming the main event. And we've got a great set of materials here sent in by you, our listeners, really focusing on strategy, how to manage secure tax, and even pass on these modern assets.
Yeah, and it's not just, theory or what ifs. The scale is already massive. It's urgent. I mean, the source material points out Bitcoin hitting, what, $73,000 earlier in 2024? And the whole crypto market cap, regularly over $2.3 trillion. That's huge.
That's definitely not niche anymore.
No way. It tells you this isn't some fad that's going away. It's a fundamental shift, really, in how wealth is being created. And if you're holding any significant digital assets, you absolutely need a proper integrated strategy, thinking about compliance, security, and, yeah, taking advantage of friendly locations.
Absolutely. And that's our mission today, right? Cut through all that complexity, give you the actionable stuff you actually need. We want to help you structure things, secure them, and specifically look at getting the most out of places like Stuart, Florida, which came up in the research you sent. But maybe before we jump into strategy, we should really pin down what we mean by digital wealth. It's kind of a fuzzy term.
That's critical because, yeah, when people hear digital wealth, they often jump straight to Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum, the speculative coins. But it's so much broader. The sources we looked at are clear.
Yeah.
Digital wealth is basically anything you primarily access through a screen.
Yeah.
So yeah, your Robinhood portfolio, sure. Balances in online banks, money in PayPal, even those, high-value NFT collections people talk about.
Okay, so collectibles too.
Yep. And crucially, it also includes your traditional investment accounts. Think Fidelity, Charles Schwab. If you're managing and mailing through apps or websites, that's digital wealth too.
Right. So it's not just the wild west of crypto, it's the whole digital footprint of your finances, which means all of it needs managing, securing. That access part is key.
Exactly. The access method, that's the common thread. All these different assets, they share that same vulnerability. They need logins, secure connections, and importantly, clear plans for who gets access later on.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Maybe the biggest hurdle, the thing that catches even savvy traditional investors off guard, is the tax side. How the IRS views this stuff fundamentally changes the game, doesn't it?
It really does. And this is, the core compliance headache. The critical point here, and it's easy to miss, but you cannot ignore it, the IRS treats cryptocurrency as property, not currency, property, like stocks or real estate or gold.
Okay, property.
And that one classification, it triggers massive compliance headaches. It basically turns simple actions into taxable events.
So hold on. I get selling Bitcoin for dollars is like selling stock. That's taxable, but property. So if I just trade Bitcoin for, say, Ethereum, or use Bitcoin to buy an NFT.
That's a taxable event too. In the eyes of the IRS, you disposed of one piece of property, your Bitcoin, to acquire another, Ethereum or the NFT. At that exact moment of the trade or purchase, you have to figure out if you made a capital gain or loss.
Wow.
Yeah. So what it means, practically, is every transaction, selling it, trading it for another crypto, even using it to buy coffee if someone accepts it, that triggers a taxable event. You're constantly creating gains or losses.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare for record keeping, especially thinking about, tons of small crypto trades or staking rewards or DeFi stuff. How do people even track that? It seems way harder than stocks.
It is harder. Two main reasons, volume and fungibility.
Yeah.
With stocks, you buy a block, your broker sends a 1099 form, it's relatively clean. With crypto, you could have hundreds, maybe thousands of tiny transactions. And Bitcoin is fungible. One Bitcoin is the same as another. So figuring out which specific Bitcoin you sold and what you paid for that one, that's the challenge.
So you need to know the exact purchase price and date for every little bit you spend or trade.
Precisely. Which leads us to the key takeaway for you, the listener. You absolutely must track the cost basis, what you paid in the holding period for every single unit of crypto you dispose of. You have to pick a method like FIFO, first in, first out, or maybe specific identification, and stick with it. Without that detailed ledger from day one, you can't calculate your gains correctly. And if you get audited, the burden of proof is on you. It can mean huge penalties.
That level of detail,
Yeah.
you definitely need more than a spreadsheet.
Oh, absolutely. For anyone with a serious portfolio, spreadsheets just won't cut it. That's why the sources specifically mention using platforms like CoinTracker or Coinly. They plug into your exchanges, your wallets, and they automate that cost basis calculation across potentially thousands of trades. Honestly, for serious holders, this isn't really optional. It's essential compliance infrastructure. It prevents potentially massive headaches and penalties down the line.
And that compliance discussion flows right into security, doesn't it? Because whether it's a buttoned-up Fidelity account you access on your phone or a private crypto wallet, if you can't keep it secure or if someone else gets in, all the tax planning in the world doesn't matter.
That's the perfect transition. Securing the assets comes first. It's the foundation for everything else. And often, the best approach combines strong tech security with, well, being smart about where you are, jurisdictionally speaking.
Which brings us nicely to that Florida advantage mentioned in the materials, specifically around Stuart, Florida. Okay, we know managing these assets is tough. Why does the location, like Florida, matter so much?
Location is huge for two big reasons: keeping more of your wealth and making sure it passes on smoothly. Florida has that massive immediate benefit, zero state income tax.
Right, that's a big one.
It's huge, especially if you're generating significant income quickly. Maybe you're doing high-frequency trading, or you have a big short-term gain from selling crypto you held less than a year. Avoiding state income tax, which can be, 10% or more in places like California or New York, that's a direct, substantial saving. And it gets even better if you time your crypto sales strategically, which we'll get into with the holding periods.
Okay, so no state tax on gains is the immediate win. What about the longer-term picture, the succession side?
That's where Florida's estate laws become really helpful. Specifically, something called the Florida Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act. Let's just call it the Fiduciary Act for short, okay?
Fiduciary Act, got it. Sounds important, maybe a bit legalese. What does it actually do for you compared to just listing, say, a bank account in your will?
It's critical because digital assets are different. They're often held by exchanges behind logins or locked up with encryption private keys. A standard will or power of attorney might not be enough to grant access. The Fiduciary Act gives your appointed representatives, your executor, maybe an agent under a power of attorney, the legal right to access your digital accounts if you pass away or become incapacitated. It helps override those strict privacy rules that exchanges often have.
But hang on, if Florida has this helpful law, why isn't succession planning for digital assets just solved then?
That's the catch. And it's a big one that even sophisticated people miss. The Fiduciary Act doesn't just magically unlock everything. It only grants that access if you've specifically and clearly documented your wishes beforehand. If you haven't made a list of your accounts, your wallets, and given clear instructions for your executor, the law can't force open doors that nobody knows exist or has the key for. Your digital wealth could end up locked away forever, basically lost, even with a good state law like Florida's on the books.
Wow, okay. And this is where it gets really interesting, maybe a bit scary. Because even with good laws, the risk of just not doing enough or not doing it right is massive. Even for people who are otherwise very successful and careful, we're talking basic cybersecurity failures.
The statistics are, frankly, quite alarming. They point to a sort of dangerous complacency around this new form of wealth. One source, Campton Wealth, found that a staggering 38% of ultra-high net worth families don't have solid cybersecurity strategies in place.
38%, that's huge.
It is. They've got alarms on the house, maybe secure vaults for physical things, but their digital fortunes, kind of exposed.
Yeah.
And it's not just targeted attacks. Look at the FBI data. Over 847,000 cybercrime complaints in 2021 alone. It shows this is widespread. High-value targets are definitely on the radar, but it's pervasive.
So, okay, we need to get specific. What are the absolute non-negotiable security steps every single person holding digital wealth needs to take right now? Let's move past just be careful online.
Right, we need actionable tools backed by data. First line of defense, absolutely mandatory. Two-factor authentication. 2FA. This isn't optional. It's essential for any platform holding significant value. Google's own security data shows 2FA blocks 100% of automated bot attacks and 96% of bulk phishing attempts.
Wow, 100% of automated attacks, 96% of phishing. Those are incredible numbers. How does it stop phishing so effectively if they already trick someone into giving up their password?
Good question. Phishing works by stealing your password. Once the thief has that, they try to log in. 2FA breaks that. It demands a second factor, something only you have. Usually it's a code from an app on your phone or a physical USB security key.
Yeah.
So even if the criminal successfully tricks you and gets your password from a fake website, they still can't log in because they don't have your phone or that physical key. It puts up a massive wall against those common attacks.
That makes total sense. Okay, 2FA is step one. What else is foundational?
Password managers. Essential. Because let's face it, human memory is terrible for creating and remembering strong, unique passwords for dozens of sites. Managers like LastPass, 1Password, Bitwarden, they generate super complex, unique passwords for every account and store them securely. So many breaches happen because people reuse weak passwords. Automating complexity with a manager is just critical.
Okay, unique complex passwords managed securely. What's next?
Third, and this is really important, if you ever access accounts outside your secure home or office network, use a virtual private network or VPN.
A VPN, even just for quickly checking my balance at the airport or a coffee shop. I thought public Wi-Fi was generally safer these days. Safer? Maybe slightly. Secure? Absolutely not. Public Wi-Fi is still inherently risky. Bad actors can be on that same network trying to sniff out traffic. A VPN encrypts all the data leaving your device, your phone, your laptop, before it hits that public Wi-Fi. It creates a secure tunnel to a remote server. This makes it basically impossible for someone on that same network to intercept your login details or see what you're doing with your financial accounts. One source mentioned a case a wealthy investor got funds drained just checking his crypto portfolio on airport Wi-Fi at LAX. The risk is very real.
Ouch. Okay, VPN for public access. What about that ongoing stuff, the boring maintenance we all put off? Yeah, the tedious but vital stuff. Regular software updates. Seems basic, right? But it's incredibly important. Data from a breach analysis back in 2019 showed that simply keeping your software updated, your operating system, your browser, your apps, patches around 60% of the vulnerabilities that cybercriminals actively exploit. Companies find security holes all the time and release patches. When you delay updates, you're leaving known doors unlocked for criminals. That's why professional managers really emphasize this discipline. The margin for error with digital wealth is practically zero.
Okay, so we've locked down the vault with 2FA, password managers, VPNs, and updates. Now let's talk strategy inside the vault. How should someone think about allocating their portfolio in this digital space, especially given how wildly crypto can swing compared to, say, index funds?
Right. Strategy has to balance that potential growth with, frankly, managing the inherent instability. Volatility demands limits. That's the core truth. The source materials are pretty specific and, I think, sensible here. They recommend investors limit direct cryptocurrency exposure to somewhere between 5% and 10% of their total investment portfolio.
5 to 10%. That feels quite conservative, maybe. If the upside is potentially huge, why not push it higher, like 20%?
It's about survival, really. That 5–10% represents the portion of your capital you could, theoretically, afford to lose entirely without completely wrecking your long-term financial security. Let's run a quick scenario. Say you have a $1 million portfolio. If you get caught up in the hype and put $250,000, that's 25% into crypto, and the market has one of its typical 50% corrections. You've just lost $125,000. That's 12.5% of your entire net worth gone. That kind of hit can seriously destabilize your long-term plans.
Yeah, that's a significant hit.
Now compare that. If you stuck to the 5% rule, your exposure is $50,000. That same 50% crash. You lose $25,000. That's still painful, but it's only a 2.5% dent in your total net worth. Much more manageable. Survivable. This rule basically ensures your foundation stays solid no matter how crazy the crypto market gets.
Okay, that makes sense as a cap on the total crypto exposure. But within that 5–10%, how should it be structured? Is it just a bucket for random altcoin bets?
Definitely not. Even within that higher risk allocation, you need structure. It should prioritize liquidity and, well, proven existence, let's say. The recommendation is that 70% of that crypto portion should be in the established players. Bitcoin and Ethereum. Think of them as the blue chips of the crypto world. Highest market caps, longest track records, most tested networks, and crucially, the best liquidity. If you suddenly need cash or need to rebalance, these are the easiest to sell quickly and efficiently.
Right, the big two. So what about the other 30% of that crypto slice?
That remaining 30% of the crypto allocation can be spread across, say, 3 to 4 carefully selected altcoins. You're looking for projects with actual proven utility, maybe unique technology, and importantly, strong, credible development teams behind them. This is your innovation bucket. It gives you exposure to potentially higher returns, but you're diversifying that risk instead of putting it all on one highly speculative, unproven project that might just disappear in the next downturn.
Okay, so 70% Bitcoin, Ethereum, 30% select altcoins, all within that 5–10% total portfolio limit. What anchors the rest? Because even 10% needs a solid base.
The anchor has to be overwhelmingly traditional, liquid, and relatively safe. Your traditional digital investments should make up 80% to 90% of your total digital wealth. We're talking about things like your Fidelity or Vanguard accounts holding index funds, maybe some high-quality bonds, perhaps sector-specific ETFs accessed digitally. This provides the stability, the predictable long-term returns, and importantly, much quicker liquidity and significantly lower counterparty risk compared to dealing with, say, newer crypto exchanges or DeFi protocols.
So Putting it all together, what does this mean for managing it day to day or maybe month to month? If my 5% crypto allocation suddenly doubles because Bitcoin went on a tear, I can't just let it ride, right? That throws the whole balance off.
Exactly right. You can't set it and forget it with crypto allocations. Maintenance is absolutely key. Because of that volatility, Bitcoin can move more in a day than stocks might in a month. Your target percentages will drift, sometimes dramatically. If Bitcoin doubles, yeah, your 5% allocation might suddenly become 10% or even more of your total portfolio. Now you're holding way more risk than you originally intended. That's why quarterly rebalances are pretty much necessary.
Quarterly rebalances, how does that actually work in practice? What are you doing?
It's a systematic process. You look at your portfolio. If the crypto portion has grown significantly above your target weight, say it's now 12% instead of your target 8%, you systematically sell off the excess crypto.
Yeah.
You sell down those winnings back to your target percentage.
Ah, okay. Taking profits.
Exactly. It's classic risk management. But it also enforces that crucial discipline of selling high. You lock in some gains, you reduce your risk exposure back to your comfort level, and often you'll channel that cash back into the traditional anchor assets, the index funds or bonds that might have lagged behind. So you're effectively buying low there too. It keeps the whole strategy on track.
Let's loop back to that Florida advantage again. We've talked about how much crypto to hold that 5–10% rule. Now let's talk about when to sell to really maximize those tax benefits we touched on earlier, especially the zero-state income tax.
Right. This is where timing becomes really powerful, especially in a zero-state tax environment like Florida. Since there's no state tax to worry about, the entire focus shifts to minimizing your federal capital gains tax. And that hinges entirely on the holding period. How long did you own the asset before selling? Short-term capital gains. This is for crypto you held for less than 12 months. These gains are taxed at your ordinary income tax rate. They basically get stacked right on top of your salary or other income, potentially facing federal rates as high as 37%.
Ouch. That's a steep penalty for selling too soon. Is there any wiggle room around that 12-month mark? Like, if I bought on January 15th one year and sold on January 15th the next year?
No wiggle room, unfortunately. The rule is very clear. The holding period must be more than 12 months to qualify for the better rates. The IRS is precise about counting the days. If you hold for long-term capital gains that's over 12 months, you qualify for much lower federal rates, 0%, 15%, or 20%, depending on your overall taxable income level. For many high-income earners, dropping from a potential 37% short-term rate down to a 20% long-term rate is a massive difference.
Let's paint a quick picture then. Say I live in Florida, I sell some Bitcoin I bought 13 months ago, and it went up a lot.
Okay, perfect scenario. Because you held it over 12 months, that profit is a long-term capital gain. You'll owe the federal capital gains tax probably 15% or 20% based on your income. But crucially, you owe zero state income tax on that gain because you're in Florida. Compare that to someone in California realizing the same gain, they'd pay the federal tax plus potentially another 10–13% in state tax. It's a huge saving. So smart investors, they watch that 12-month date like a hawk. They time their sales whenever possible to cross that threshold and lock in the lower long-term rate. It's probably the single most important date on the crypto tax calendar.
Beyond just holding for the year, there's another powerful technique mentioned, tax loss harvesting. Given how much crypto can swing down as well as up, this must be a really useful tool.
Oh, it's absolutely essential in a volatile market like crypto. Tax loss harvesting is basically strategically selling assets that are currently trading below what you paid for them. You intentionally realize that loss on paper. Why? Because that realized capital loss can then be used to offset capital gains you've realized elsewhere, maybe from selling winning stocks or other crypto that went up. It directly reduces your overall taxable income.
Can you give a quick example?
Sure. Let's say you sold some Apple stock and made a $50,000 profit. That's a $50,000 taxable gain. But you also hold, I don't know, some altcoin that's down $40,000 from what you paid. If you sell that altcoin, you harvest that $40,000 loss. You can then use that $40,000 loss to offset your $50,000 stock gain. Net result, you only owe taxes on a $10,000 gain, $50K gain, $40K loss. It's an immediate way to lower your tax bill.
That sounds pretty great. But there's a catch, right? The wash sale rule, that 30-day waiting period, how does that work with crypto, which trades 24/7? Is it easier to mess up?
Yes, it's significantly easier to accidentally violate the spirit of the wash sale rule with crypto. Now, technically, the IRS hasn't explicitly applied the wash sale rule, which normally applies to securities, to crypto yet, because crypto is property. However, the overwhelming consensus among tax professionals is that you should act as if it applies. That means you need to wait at least 30 days after selling a crypto at a loss before buying back that same crypto or something substantially identical.
What makes it easy to mess up?
The 24/7 trading across multiple platforms. You might sell Bitcoin on Coinbase to harvest a loss. Then, without thinking, maybe buy some Bitcoin on Kraken just 2 weeks later because the price dipped. Boom, you likely just violated the 30-day window, and the IRS could disallow that loss you were counting on. You have to be really careful tracking dates across all platforms.
Wow. Okay, so even with a relatively simple crypto holding, tracking the cost basis, the exact purchase and sale dates, the holding periods, harvesting losses, avoiding wash sales, it sounds incredibly complex. This isn't DIY territory for most people, is it?
For anything beyond the absolute basics, no, probably not. The IRS demands detailed reporting on specific forms, Form 8949 and Schedule D. You need that backup documentation for every single transaction. Now, consumer tax software, like TurboTax Premier or Free Tax USA, they can handle some basic crypto reporting. But if you have a complex situation, lots of trades, staking income, maybe mining rewards, yield farming, and DeFi, you almost certainly need a certified public accountant, CPA. And not just any CPA, but one who specifically understands digital asset taxation. Their expertise costs money, but it buys you compliance and peace of mind.
Okay, let's shift gears one more time to maybe the most neglected piece of this whole puzzle. Planning for what happens after you're gone. Succession planning. The sources were pretty clear that most people, even in forward-thinking states like Florida with its Fiduciary Act, are dropping the ball on planning for their digital assets. Why is this such a persistent blind spot?
I think it's a mix of things. The technology is new and evolves fast. And there's maybe a reluctance, a fear of sharing very private details like keys and passwords. People are used to listing their house, their car, their bank accounts in a will. That feels normal. But talking about a hardware wallet secured by a 24-word seed phrase or an exchange account locked down with 2FA, your standard will language just doesn't cover the access part. A will can say who inherits it, but it can't force a device or an exchange to unlock itself.
Right, the how to actually get it problem.
Exactly. And that's precisely why Florida's Fiduciary Act is so valuable. But, like we said earlier, it only works if you do your part. It requires that explicit documentation beforehand. Without instructions, the law is helpful, but maybe not sufficient on its own.
That documentation seems to be the absolute key then. What are the immediate practical steps someone listening should take right now to make sure their digital wealth doesn't get lost or locked up forever?
Okay, first step. Create a detailed inventory, a master list. This needs to list every single crypto exchange you use, Coinbase, Kraken, Binance, whatever. Every digital wallet, soft wallets, hardware wallets like Ledger or Trezor, and crucially, the access information usernames, maybe password hints, not the passwords themselves, and clear instructions on how to use the 2FA, how to access the hardware wallet. This master list needs to be stored incredibly securely, maybe encrypted digitally, maybe physically in a safe. But your designated executor needs to know it exists and how to access it only after your death or incapacity is legally confirmed.
We touched on multi-signature wallets earlier. They sound good for security while you're alive, but how do they fit into this succession planning piece? Can they make the transfer smoother?
Yes, multi-signature or multi-sig wallets are actually a very elegant solution for both problem security and succession. During your lifetime, they boost security because maybe you need, say, 2 out of 3 private keys to approve any transaction. So if one key gets stolen or lost, your funds are still safe.
Okay, that makes sense for security. How does that setup help the heirs?
Well, you can strategically distribute those keys. Maybe you hold one key yourself, your spouse holds the second key, and maybe your estate attorney or a trusted fiduciary service holds the third key. Now, when you pass away, your designated heirs, or the executor, already have access to the required number of keys, 2 in this example, to collectively access and control the assets. It neatly bypasses the whole problem of the executor trying to find passwords or fight with exchanges for access. The keys are already distributed according to your plan. It can prevent assets being stuck in probate for months or even years.
Okay, this is clearly complex. Managing the allocation, the security, the taxes, the estate planning. For many people, especially with significant holdings, getting professional help seems almost necessary. But this digital asset world is still pretty new. How does someone listening actually vet a potential wealth manager? How do you find someone who genuinely gets both traditional finance and this complex blockchain stuff?
Yeah, due diligence is absolutely critical here. Because, frankly, the space is a lot of people who might talk a good game but lack deep expertise. You need to look for specific credentials and, maybe even more importantly, probe their technical understanding. First, baseline. Are they a fiduciary? They should hold a Series 65 license and be actively registered as an investment advisor representative, either with the SEC or the Florida Office of Financial Regulation. This means they have a legal duty to put your interests first.
Okay, Series 65 for the fiduciary duty. What about general investment smarts?
Look for the gold standards. CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst, shows deep investment analysis skills. CFP, Certified Financial Planner, indicates comprehensive financial planning expertise, especially linking investments to tax and estate planning. But, and this is key, those traditional credentials alone are not enough for managing digital assets effectively.
Right. So what's the digital litmus test? How do you confirm they actually understand the technology and the specific risks of crypto?
You need proof of experience. Look for a minimum of, say, 3 years of hands-on experience investing in and managing cryptocurrencies for clients. Ask about their documented track record with different blockchain platforms. Also, absolutely essential, ask if their firm carries errors and omissions, insurance. This protects you if they make a significant mistake. Request proof. And always verify their registration and any disciplinary history using the free FINRA broker check database online.
Okay, let's say I'm interviewing a potential manager. I don't want just buzzwords. I want to know they can actually handle my assets securely. What specific tough questions should I be asking?
You need to get technical and specific about their processes. Ask them directly. How do you handle private key storage for clients? Do they recommend non-custodial solutions where you keep control of your keys? Do they use institutional custodians? Do they use advanced methods like multi-party computation, MPC? Vague answers are a red flag. The best answer often involves you retaining ultimate control of the keys, with them advising.
That custody question seems central. What about those multi-sig setups we just talked about?
Definitely ask, how do you implement multi-signature wallets for clients? Do they have a clear process? Can they walk you through setting up a hardware wallet and securely distributing the keys? Or is it just theory for them? Ask, what are your specific security audit procedures for digital asset custody, even if it's non-custodial advice? They need detailed answers about hardware, software, protocols, not just we use high security.
Okay, that covers the tech security. What about the money side, the fees?
Demand absolute clarity. Ask for a detailed fee structure that clearly separates their management fee from any transaction costs or custody fees. Be wary of firms that seem to be making big markups on crypto trades themselves. Ask for references specifically from clients who have digital asset portfolios similar in size and complexity to yours. And absolutely insist on getting a written investment policy statement, IPS, before you sign anything. This document should spell out exactly how they'll manage your money. The target allocations, the triggers for rebalancing, their specific tax loss harvesting strategy, and how they plan to integrate everything with your estate plan, referencing things like the Florida Fiduciary Act.
We've talked about what good looks like. Now let's flip it. What are the immediate red flags, the warning signs that should make someone listening just walk away no matter how slick the presentation?
Yeah, there are definitely clear warning signs that suggest a manager might be incompetent, conflicted, or even fraudulent. First, huge red flag. Anyone promising guaranteed returns on crypto, or claiming they can perfectly time the market swings. Impossible. Legitimate advisors talk about risk management and long-term strategy. Second, be very wary of firms pushing you hard into their own proprietary investment products. These often have high, hidden fees that benefit the firm more than you. Also, never pay large upfront fees before they've actually done any work. A standard advisory fee structure based on assets under management is typical.
Any red flags related specifically to the portfolio allocation advice we discussed?
Yes. If a manager suggests putting more than 15% of your total portfolio into cryptocurrencies, they are likely taking on far too much risk, flying in the face of established diversification principles. That 5–10% range is based on sound risk management. Similarly, be extremely cautious if they start recommending lots of obscure altcoins that don't have any real track record, market traction, or clear utility. That sounds more like speculation than investment management. And finally, the basics. If they can't clearly show you their regulatory registration, if they refuse to give you a written fee disclosure, or if they get cagey when you ask detailed questions about custody or their fiduciary duty, just walk away. Not worth the risk.
This has been incredibly thorough, a real deep dive into what it takes to navigate this new world of digital wealth. So to kind of wrap up the value here, it feels like the big takeaway is that this shift to digital assets, it's real, it's permanent, and being strategic about it is the only way to really benefit from unique advantages like Florida's tax situation and its forward-thinking estate laws.
Couldn't agree more. Success really boils down to integrating those 3 pillars we hit on. 1, Smart portfolio allocation, sticking to that disciplined 5-10% crypto limit,
Nice.
structured correctly. 2, tax-smart timing, using that 12-month holding period, harvesting losses when appropriate, leveraging Florida's zero-state tax. And 3, rock-solid security protocols, making 2FA, good password hygiene, and VPNs just standard practice. That holistic approach is what protects you from the volatility and the threats out there. And yeah, getting professional help often ensures you're ticking all the compliance boxes, especially with things like the Fiduciary Act documentation.
Right, and we wanted to leave you, the listener, with one final thought to chew on. Something that really builds on that critical need for documentation we discussed. Because remember, the Florida Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act, that helpful law, it only guarantees access for your heirs if you've actually written down your wishes, your accounts, your instructions.
So here's the provocation. If something happened to you right now, today, how much of your total net worth, think about it, the crypto on exchanges, the funds in your PayPal, those stocks in your trading app, the NFTs, how much of that is currently invisible, undocumented, potentially completely inaccessible to the people you care about? That potential gap, that digital blind spot, that's the critical inventory work that really needs to start now.
That is definitely something to think about, a powerful note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into securing and growing your digital wealth. We really hope you feel better equipped now to take action on these crucial points.